Hello and welcome to another video and podcast from fantasyfootballscout.co.uk. My name is David and today we are going to be comparing two of the most popular players in FPL in recent seasons and indeed ahead of the new campaign. That is Bruno Fernandes and Marcus Rashford, who have come into the 2023-24 season priced just 0.5 million pounds apart from each other, and a lot of debate is already happening in the FPL community about which of these two is the best to own for game week 1. Bruno Fernandes has come into the new campaign at 8.5 million, and of course Marcus Rashford has climbed from 6.5 million to 9 million. And so with those two players in a very similar price point and a lot of competition for those places in that price point from other clubs, a lot of managers basically just want to have one of those two and want to make sure that they're getting the right one. But that 0.5 between them means that there's a little bit of debate because one of them can save you money. Potentially Rashford, the more expensive player, is he worth paying the extra 0.5 million? That's what we're going to discuss and find out today. And I've got a lot of help on that front from my colleagues in the editorial department at fantasyfootballscout.co.uk, who've put together a fantastic article comparing these two players using some of the tools that you can find in the Fantasy Football Scout members area. So before we get going, a little shout out to Tom Freeman in the editorial department for doing a lot of the groundwork on this video. A lot of the research is his, not mine. And also a shout out to those of you who haven't secured your Fantasy Football Scout membership for the new season. And as I said, what you're about to see in this video is going to showcase a lot of the benefits that you can get if you sign up now. Now is the time to do it. You can save up to 30% on those preseason prices. You'll get world-leading preseason guide for all FPL teams. That is, of course, includes the preseason minutes tracker, with only place that's going to accumulate all of that information in the same place to save you following a load of threads on Twitter, or indeed Threads, the new version of Twitter. We've got season points projections, team transfer planners, and drafts from the best FPL managers, including some previous winners as well. All of those things are included in membership. So head to fantasyfootballscout.co.uk, go to members benefits, and pick the package that is right for you. It will absolutely help you win your mini leagues and beat your mates at FPL. And so, to start with, let's have a look at one of my favourite tools from the Fantasy Football Scout members area that can help you with these 50-50s, which is, of course, the comparison tool. And so on the screen right now, I've got some tables, and I've got a heat map, or a touch map, or a shot map, I should say, from the comparison tool section. On the left-hand side, we've got Marcus Rashford. On the right-hand side, we've got Bruno Fernandes. And what this is an XG shot map. And what that does is it lays out all of the shots from the period that you have told the members area to look at. And so on this particular occasion, we are looking at the entire of last season. And it registers each shot as a different size bubble. The bigger the bubble, the higher the XG. So if you've got a very high XG chance, it's going to have a very big bubble, and if you've got a very low XG chance, it's going to have a very small bubble. Now, the ones that are in green are those that are on target or were a goal, and then the ones that are in blue are ones that are in target and not a goal, and then those that are in red are those that are off target. And what you can see already is that when we look at goal threat between these two players, because that's what we're assessing first, obviously it is Rashford that is further ahead in that regard, and that of course is backed up by the numbers as well. So if we look at last season, minutes per goal, Rashford got a goal every 169.4 minutes, whereas Fernandes found himself getting himself a goal every 414 minutes. Minutes per penalty box touch, Rashford was ahead again, one every 14.5 minutes. Fernandes one every 21.1 minutes. Minutes per shot, every 26.7 minutes for Rashford, every 36 minutes for Fernandes. When that's in the box, whether that's in the box, there's an even bigger dichotomy here between these two players because Rashford really was a penalty box shooter. Minutes per shot in the box for Rashford last season, 36.9. Minutes per shot in the box for Fernandes last season, 73.6. Minutes per shot on target, Rashford got himself one every 58.8 minutes, Fernandes every 97.4. And then minutes per XG, so how quickly he was accumulating XG scores. He got an XG every 186.2 minutes, did Rashford. Fernandes every 355. Now, what that translated to was Rashford got himself 17 goals last season. That was a tally beaten only by Salah among FPL midfielders, and was just in a complete league of his own compared to Fernandes. And when you compare those speeds, we've got Rashford registering a shot in the box and an XG at roughly twice the speed per game than compared to Fernandes. Now, interestingly enough, these XG figures for Fernandes were boosted by 2 penalties, which means that his non-penalty XG last season was 1 every 427 minutes compared to 1 every 355 minutes when the penalties were included. Now, of course, you have to still include the penalties because we think he's still going to be involved. But of course, that just goes to show you that penalties are a big part of Fernandes' goal threat. And let's just jump back into this XG shot map to see a visualization of some of what we've just discussed there. Is that, yes, Rashford's XG shot map shows a very, very high concentration of green and blue bubbles all inside the penalty box. And what you can see is that on average, each of those bubbles is bigger than the ones that we see in Fernandes's. Now, Fernandes has considerably more outside of the box. There's still plenty of them inside the box, but that balance between in and out of the box is different with him. The vast majority of Rashford's inside the box, and then you've got more of a split in and out of the box for Fernandes. There's a couple of big bubbles in there. You'll notice they're near the penalty spot because penalties do carry a very high XG figure. So, yeah, the basic story of the whole season, as you will not be surprised to see, is that Rashford was the bigger goal threat. And the Fantasy Football Scout members area can really help visualize that for you if that's something that you're looking for. And of course, you can do this for all sorts of players. If you've got other 50-50 calls that you need to make ahead of the new season, perhaps maybe you're a bit concerned about which of the Arsenal players to go for, which of the Brighton players to go for, by all means, go to the Fantasy Football Scout members area and have a look at the comparison tool for the shot maps, touch maps, things like that, and that will help answer those questions. And we will have a couple of other videos on how you can do that later in the summer. So that's the course of the whole campaign. There are obviously ebbs and flows within a campaign, and of course Rashford's form did drop off towards the end of the campaign. He scored just 3 goals in his last 11 Premier League appearances from game week 26 onwards. Thing is with that, United did look a little bit tired towards the end, and they obviously had a lot of midweek matches as well. And so it's possible that that's a mitigating factor for why Rashford's form dropped off. And at the very least, he was still the biggest goal threat for Man United during that period, and he was ahead of all of his colleagues for all of the goal threat metrics, shots in the box, big chances, XG, for example, during that stage of the season. So Rashford's very clear on the goal threat, which could suggest that 0.5 on him is going to go a long way. But it's not just goal threat that we look for in FPL midfielders. We also need to see what their assist potential is. And if you're a Bruno Fernandes fan out there and you're getting a little bit stressed by how far Marcus Rashford was ahead of his colleague in the most recent section, well, let's have a look at the assist potential, and we can maybe turn those tables in the words of Michael Scott. So the assist potential then, and what we've got on the screen now is another thing you can do with the comparison tool in the Fantasy Football Scout members area. What we've done is we've changed it so that the visualization is now chances created or key passes, whatever you want to call it. These are opportunities. These are moments in games where these players have tried to create opportunities for others, and those that became assists are in green, and those that did not become an assist are in yellow. And wow. On the right-hand side, we've got Fernandes there, and it's a veritable swarm of yellow. It's basically a bunch of fireflies just on a lovely summer's evening, to be honest, whereas Rashford's is a little bit more sparse. And we'll go into some numbers to back that up, and then we'll jump back into that chances created map to look at it in more detail. So, minutes per assist last season, Rashford got an assist every 411.4 minutes, Fernandes every 368. Minutes per cross, Rashford got himself a cross every 120 minutes last season. Fernandes provided one every 23.7. Minutes per chance created or key pass, one every 96 minutes for Rashford. So, in effect, just under one per game, whereas Fernandes produced a key pass every 28 minutes, which is a considerably faster rate. And then minutes per expected assist, one every 1,047.3 minutes for Rashford and one every 308.7 for Fernandes. And so, yes, Fernandes absolutely bossed the creative stats last season. And of course, he is one of the best playmakers in the Premier League. So what do you expect in many ways? 119 key passes across the whole campaign. 32 of those were big chances, which if you don't know what that means, that's when Opta deems the chance that has been created one that led to a big chance or for want of a better expression, a high XG chance. So 32 of those. And so for both of those stats, he was among the top 2 last season. And he was second only to Kevin De Bruyne for expected assists among midfielders. So he registered 8 Opta assists from 10.73 XA, underperforming by about 2.73. But if Man United do sign a more clinical striker in the summer, has been links, of course, with Harry Kane, then it could help him bump up those assist figures even more. Whereas Rashford, he racked up 7 assists in 22-23, but only 2 of those were of the fantasy variety, and so therefore 5 of those were normal assists. And so, XA can't help you measure the fantasy assists, when rebounded shots and things like that, or perhaps winning a penalty. So his XA was just 2.75. Now, that does not rank particularly highly compared to Man United colleagues. So, Bruno Fernandes, of course, Jadon Sancho, Casemiro, Christian Eriksen and Luke Shaw all outperformed Rashford for assist potential last season. Sancho with 4.11 XA, Casemiro with 3.92, Christian Eriksen with 3.42 and Luke Shaw with 2.88. And so that helps contextualise this chances created map that we've got on the screen right now. Where you can see Rashford was getting a lot of his assists from was outside of the box, and there's not a lot of times when he was creating assists for other people when he was in the box, and that obviously is because when he's in the box traditionally he was shooting, which is no bad thing, of course, because 5 points for a goal for a midfielder in FPL is worth having, of course. Whereas Fernandes, there's a spread of assists just from pretty much everywhere. He's got a couple in the box. You can see that in and around the edge of the box is where he's predominantly attempting to assist, but there's even some assists from super deep as well. And we'll come back to that in a minute, because we are going to talk a little bit about where Fernandes might fit into Man United's system next season. And yeah, it's certainly encouraging that you can see that he's got 1 assist from basically inside his own defensive third. He's got 2 from inside the centre circle, 1 from just to the right-hand side of the centre circle as well. A healthy number in the gap between the centre circle and the box, and a number in the box as well. And as I said, it's the sheer volume of attempted assists there that just show you how important his assist potential was. He finished the season very strongly as well. So this is the whole campaign, what you can see here. But in terms of what he achieved towards the back end, between game weeks 27 and 38, he created 14 big chances, which was more than any other player, and crucially was double that of the 4 players tied for third most big chances created during that period. So that's just insane. He was double the amount of those who were also in the top 3 for big chances created during that period. So he is a massively high-producing assist maker. And so what we can see from the basic numbers using the comparison tools in Fantasy Football Scout members area is that Rashford is the clear goal threat, Fernandes is the clear assist maker, with some goal threat and of course involvement in penalties as well. But Rashford's assist potential is really quite low. But the thing is, it's not always necessarily about those raw abilities in terms of goal threat and assist potential when players are on the pitch, because they're not necessarily always there. And they're not always necessarily in the best position to optimize what they can produce. So we have to talk about other considerations as well. So we'll have a look at a bit of that now. So first things first, we do need to have a look at what Fernandes' position is going to be in the pre-season, because there's a possibility that he could play a little bit deeper to accommodate Mason Mount, who has just joined the club. Now, he did actually do very well in that deeper position when Eriksen was out injured, and it's possibly something we could see him do again. Now, I've said many times before that forget fantasy, forget attacking potential. I've always really enjoyed watching Bruno drop deep and help screen the back 4 and win the ball back and get things ticking for his team in ways that sometimes hamper his FPL potential, but just show that he is one of the best box-to-box midfielders in the Premier League, even if he's renowned for being a number 10. He's very, very good at that. And there will be times, I imagine, especially in the big games against the bigger clubs, where Man United will need to have more of their top players doing the donkey work against a good team. We will see Fernandes take up that role. Now, that doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing, because as we just looked at before, he was still capable of getting assists from deep. So there was a bit of time this season, as we've already mentioned, where Eriksen was out and Casemiro missed a few games with suspension, and Sabitzer started playing in a slightly more advanced role for Man United, where Fernandes was playing deep. But his numbers reflected that, in that there was a drop-off in his goal threat, but there wasn't massive drop-off in his assist potential, and he was still able to assist from deep. So it's quite a nuanced thing. Yes, we have to think about where he's going to play, but let's still monitor in pre-season. If he is playing deep, is he still able to contribute to things that can help in FPL? Assists is the most likely, and of course, even if he's playing deep, he might still be on penalties, so make sure you keep an eye out for that as well. Now, of course, the other possibility is that Mount occupies the Eriksen role, and that means that Fernandes can remain as the number 10, because all those qualities I've just mentioned there about Fernandes doing the donkey work against the big clubs, you could argue that Mason Mount is equally as capable of doing those. He could also play Mount and Fernandes as two number 8s, either side of Casemiro, playing a much deeper role. So there's all sorts of things up in the air about where Fernandes is going to occupy a role for Man United. So keep an eye on the pre-season to work out what that is going to look like. And as I said at the beginning of the video, Fantasy Football Scout membership is massively going to help you with that. That pre-season minutes tracker is going to show you who's playing what minutes, what position they're playing in, and what impact that's having on their FPL returns in terms of goals, assists, and involvement in set pieces. So all of those questions, keep an eye on Fantasy Football Scout to get the answers for those. Now, as much as there's confusion about where Fernandes might play for Man United this season, you could argue there's a mild smidge of confusion perhaps about Rashford as well. Now, he could be on the wing, or he could be a number 9 for Man United. It all depends on what they do in the transfer market. As I've said, there's already links with, well, it has been links for some time with Harry Kane. Whether or not they're able to secure him remains to be seen. It's probably a bit of an ambitious transfer, but we know Man United are out in the market looking for a centre forward. And so if a centre forward comes in and occupies that more central striker role that Rashford has enjoyed last season, and he's pushed out towards the wing, could that impact his goal threat? Again, keep an eye on the transfer market in the summer. Fingers crossed, if Man United do sign someone, they do it soon, so we can watch lots of pre-season games where we can see how that new striker plays and interplays with Rashford and what impact that has on him as well. Now, there's all sorts of other factors as well. For example, Fernandes didn't start the 22-23 campaign particularly well. Just 2 goals and 2 goals and 2 assists in his first 13 Premier League matches before the World Cup. But after that, 13 goal contributions in his following 24 matches. So sometimes looking at the whole season as a whole doesn't tell the whole story. And that's why it was important that when we looked at those comparisons to bring in some other stories from later in the campaign. And just to highlight again, if you're using the comparison tool in the members area, you can always change the time period at which you're looking at things. So those comparisons there were for the whole season, but if you just click on the drop down boxes above it, you can change the game week range to maybe 27 to 38, 26 to 38, or maybe game week, I think it was 17 was the first one after the World Cup, so you could go 17 to 38 and compare maybe Fernandes with himself, game weeks 1 to 16, game week 17 to 38, to see what difference there was between him in the first half of the season and the second half of the season. All sorts of things you can do. So don't forget that as well as being an important part here. And also what's very important as well, especially when we come to looking at different stages of the season, is having a look at what those different narratives either side of the World Cup meant for minutes. Because the one thing that we haven't talked about so far is just how much of a minutes machine Fernandes is. Now, Rashford, of course, did have some injuries, but even that in and of itself does count against him to some extent. You can't necessarily predict injuries, but he has been dealing with a number of knocks last season. And there was a number of times when he was yellow flagged and we had difficult decisions to make about, do we sell him? Do we hold him through the injury? How long is he going to be out? Things like that. Never really got that with Fernandes because he seems like a very robust player who never gets injured. And even if he does get some niggles and some knocks, he recovers quickly. And he doesn't seem to be affected by playing all the games, just whatever the competition is, whether that's in Europe or domestic cup. Doesn't hamper him starting games. And so, what we've got here in front of us is some very encouraging numbers for his ability to start all the time. So 37 starts for Fernandes compared to Rashford's 32. 3,312 minutes played last season to Rashford's 2,880. Fernandes was never subbed on. So the only game he missed was when he wasn't required or wasn't available. Rashford was used as a sub 3 times. But then there's also the fact that Fernandes doesn't have his minutes managed either, because he was only, well, for the most part, because he was subbed off 4 times, whereas Rashford was subbed off 13 times. Now, some of that, of course, was to do with the fact that there was injuries. But there were other times when the manager just wanted to change the way that Man United were approaching the game from an offensive perspective. And whenever he wanted to do that, the chances of that impacting Fernandes' minutes was much lower, because it's harder to replicate what he brought to the team than perhaps it was for Rashford, or maybe the manager wanted to go in a different direction. And so they're not far off in these numbers in terms of minutes per appearance. But Fernandes, minutes per appearance, every start on average lasted 89.5 minutes, whereas for Rashford it lasted on average 85.7 minutes per appearance, and then per start it was 89.5 minutes on average for a Fernandes start, and 82.3 minutes for a Rashford start. As I said, those numbers aren't tremendously far away, but they do just show that if you are worried at any stage of the season with these two guys, who's the more reliable player to hold for a longer period of fixtures, especially if there's congestion as well, Fernandes is going to win that debate in that issue in isolation. Now, of course, your job is to marry up all of these things together: minutes, goal threat, assist potential, impact of other players. All of those things, we have to filter them through into a larger umbrella decision. And one last thing we should just throw in before we come to the conclusion for that is, of course, the penalties as well. Fernandes, we expect to remain on those penalties, but Man United only got 3 penalties last season, which seems like a bit of an outlier in many ways, and it's possible that is why he didn't get as many goals as we perhaps would expect. Man City, by comparison, they got 10 penalties. And so if Man United are able to get their penalties won back to a more average number for them, it could mean more goals for Fernandes. But as I said, let's pull all of those into a final sort of umbrella decision that takes all of these different things into consideration. The membership tools are very, very useful for helping you do this at home as well, because, when we do these bits of content, we go into the members area, we pull things out and give you a conclusion, but we can only do that for so many narratives and discussions and debates every week, every summer. If you've got discussions that you've got in your head, you've got 50-50s between players that perhaps we haven't looked at yet, jump into the members area, look at the comparison tools across the whole campaign, look at different sections of the campaign, and it can help you make your decision as well, because every fantasy football manager needs a scout, and that's the way that membership can help you. But yes, in a nutshell, Rashford, he's the goal scorer. Fernandes, he is the creator. And so it's very difficult to say that Fernandes is necessarily the better FPL pick when we remove the money considerations. But of course, with 0.5 saving, he can still get you goals and assists, because his involvement in penalties does help him catch up with Rashford's goal threat. But Rashford can't really catch up with Fernandes' assist threat. And so if you're finding yourself in a situation where you need to make a 0.5 saving elsewhere to optimize your team, there's worse decisions that you could make than switching from Rashford to Fernandes. I think the conclusion largely is they're both good options, and that which one is the best for your team is perhaps situational. Now, that may change. Pre-season may change a lot of that. And if one of them is showing much better form in pre-season, then maybe the dial shifts in one particular direction. But that's just how we see it at the current point in time. We should look at the fixtures as well, because there's ways that you can perhaps make a decision based on that. So in the first 8 matches, we've got Wolves at home for United, Spurs away, Nottingham Forest at home, Arsenal away, Brighton at home, Burnley away, Crystal Palace at home, Brentford at home. So that is a lot of home matches for Man United. So in their first 8 game weeks, they play at home 5 times. And at Old Trafford, Rashford was very good there last season. 13 goals in 16 starts at home. So maybe he's the one to start with if you're going to play the fixtures. But Fernandes, his underlying numbers are still very encouraging, and the signing of a new centre-forward could potentially help even take his assist potential to an even higher level. We saw that he underperformed against his XA last season, which means the people he was trying to assist for didn't always finish their dinner. If they get someone in who can, then his assist potential is going to skyrocket. And so you've got to argue that being able to get a penalty taker and a dead ball specialist from a Champions League club in the 8.5 million bracket is very appealing, especially if he keeps hold of those penalties. And even in a deeper role, he can still help you. And so hopefully this video has helped you, because I appreciate that I've tried to do Fernandes versus Rashford, and in effect I've made a case for both of them. But that doesn't have to be a bad thing either, because if you feel very confident that United can really double down on these fixtures and get lots of attacking returns, we are sat in a position where for 9 million plus 8.5 million, you can get both of these guys, and I think they're both going to do very well. Whether or not I double up on them at the start of the season remains to be seen, because we've got the first two of the first three, so Wolves and Nottingham Forest, two of the first three, very attractive fixtures, but of course away games against Spurs and Arsenal make me think I wouldn't want to double up just yet. But when we get really nice runs, having both of these players is an exciting idea. Perhaps if they get some double game weeks as well, having both of these players for this sort of price also looks very good as well. So that's probably my overall conclusion from this, is pick one of these two. I don't think there's necessarily a wrong answer. Whether or not you get Rashford or Fernandes, it perhaps depends on what you unlock elsewhere. But when there's an opportunity to have both, wow, that could be a very exciting time. As I said, all of this has come from the Fantasy Football Scout members area, so if you haven't already signed up for the start of the new season, then please head to the website, check out all of the different benefits. Don't just take my word for it. Have a look for yourself and pick the package that's right for you, because you absolutely will reap the benefits of signing up now, especially as you can save up to 30%. I would also be remiss in my duty if I didn't remind you guys to like this video and subscribe to the Fantasy Football Scout YouTube channel, and of course hit that bell notification as well to make sure that you don't miss any content throughout the summer. We're going to have all sorts of videos and podcasts coming your way, including team reveals from the best managers in the community, other analysis of different key 50-50s ahead of game week 1 like this one, and scout reports on new players, new managers, and any players who've switched one Premier League club for another. So there's plenty of things going on. Make sure you don't miss out. And with that, I will leave you fine folks to enjoy the rest of your tinkering, and I will see you next time.